I left the US at 18. The relative comfort and convenience of the US at 18. Here's what it taught me about life and how I'm likely more prepared for what the world has to offer than most people in their 40s. No, I'm not going to sit here and talk to you about how I truly went about, moving, because I think that's a whole video in and of itself, and why the US isn't what it used to be. However, I will tell you exactly how it prepared me to live in a society that is increasingly mobile, is increasingly global, and allows for more nuance day to day and more patience day to day. That has grown my businesses, my life, and overall how I view life. While I am perhaps one of the case studies in an American teen just wanting to get away initially, I don't believe I have taken the same path as most have. I'm certainly not in the same way that most people do it. Most do it and they're back within, a few months because, oh, I can't get this or that, and they fizzle out. And I don't blame them for fizzling out necessarily. However, learning grit, learning integral skills to be able to live a life that obviously you want to live is not just something that you can get through staying in your home country. I don't believe. Because the true grit is going completely out of your comfort zone and living a life you believe to be significant and impactful. Now, for some people, the impact is something that they can do at home. However, I know for me, and I know for many of my friends, and additionally, probably a lot of you out there, it is difficult to find meaning and purpose in life on the same level as you would in, your home country. I've lived in 6 different countries. I'm currently in beautiful Ukraine and just walking to the gym right now. However, learning to truly dial in what you're wanting out of life becomes so much easier when you've traveled and when you know what you want and how you want it. For many of my friends that I meet, especially Americans outside of the United States, oftentimes they're kind of disaffected with especially American politics and how those impact people day to day. And while I think that realistically there is some benefit to staying within the United States, particularly if you're wanting millions or billions of dollars, I don't think that the US is cut out to be a country that you can grow in as easily anymore. Obviously, global social mobility is on an upward trend, whereas American global mobility is on a downward trend. And this is true of all developed nations. Obviously, I'm sure many of you will have heard that global poverty has been reduced by 80% since the internet has been invented. And that's not solely because of the internet, though that is a wide driving factor. It's also because more people have more access to education, a global way of life, and to modern conveniences that otherwise would not have been given to them prior to the internet. And living in these countries, you kind of learn to truly grasp what you are trying to benefit from. And I think it truly makes you think twice about just about every aspect of your life, as it has mine. It's with this deep reflection that you become so much more mentally and emotionally and physically stable. Obviously, at first, very tough. Many people, as I said, fail within the first few months. And that mental maturity doesn't kick in because you want to go back to comfort. You want to go back to how you lived your life before. And obviously, me being in a war zone right now, I have a little bit more stress than I would in, a Poland or who knows, a Slovakia, right? I have a little bit more stress, just a tiny bit. But I can handle things like this now, and I can help people in ways that I wasn't able to prior because I was so focused on trying to make myself even just get out of bed. And while that sounds dramatic, I'm sure many Americans especially can relate to that, the crushing weight of getting out of bed at 6 a.m. to go to work, which you know is going to last until 12, and just feeling stuck, like you are not growing, even if you are, and feeling like you haven't made any progress. And while I obviously appreciate what I've been given and the opportunities America has provided me, I am very glad I left the United States, especially with all the political upheaval on both sides of the political aisle and how people, made their grave, so to speak. They dug their own grave in terms of stability, confidence, and just living a life that they want to live. Because I know many Americans just feel trapped by the system. They think that they can't get out of the system, while, obviously I've done it. And that makes me much more prepared for what the world has to offer me. It has grown my financial status. I'm not in debt, and I'm 21. So being 21 with no debt, it helps me to have this sense of reasoning that a lot of Americans don't, because at my age, I think the average is like negative 14,000 US dollars. Whereas I'm at a slight positive. I won't get into my exact net worth. However, I'm at a slight positive in this point in my life. And I'm able to make decisions on the basis of being more stable, being more open to living life and to not having this inherent necessity to keep chasing money in the pursuit of not being happier, not being more mindful of my living standards, but instead I can go out and I can have a coffee at 10 a.m. Or I can go out and I can go out with a dinner with business partners and not have to worry about them picking up the tab. Because at the end of the day, I have the money to afford that level of living. And especially in Eastern Europe, where I currently am, it's significantly cheaper. Now, I will say that Warsaw, or Warszawa in Polish, is significantly more expensive now than it was even just a few years ago. And the reason why is obviously the lack of control over their monetary policy over the last few years. It's the same in Greece, it's the same in several EU countries. While salaries have gone up as well, it is more difficult now to live just about anywhere. But what is often overlooked and underappreciated is that the US is cheap, and the US is a place where you can build wealth, especially on these internationalization channels. Yeah, if you want to build millions and millions of dollars, the US is the place to do it. If you want to build true billion-dollar fortunes without having this necessity for corruption, then the US is indeed a place where you can go and do that. However, you won't have the same stability, you won't have the same lifestyle choices, and you don't need billions of dollars to live. Currently, I am living on not that much. However, I'm not spending $50,000 a month to live, even while traveling full time and, seeing different countries and living in different countries. Even in Poland, I was able to keep expenses down like near $1,000 a month, which obviously many Poles in the comments will say, oh, you probably didn't do that. But yeah, I did. Rented actually, I think it was a little bit less than $1,000 a month. And yeah, you need roommates. Yeah, you're not going to be the most comfortable in that environment, but it won't be bad off. And realistically, that was the best time of my life. I had the most success in relationships. I had the most success in living in a way that I wasn't, I was healing. And that's important. That's something that not many people get to do in the modern day, is heal. And while I think that realistically, in the modern day, many people chase vanity metrics, it's important to realize that vanity metrics truly don't matter. And especially in the modern day, stability is difficult. And what you should be striving for is not necessarily millions of dollars. That's a byproduct of having a stable, sustainable, and realistically enjoyable life. And so many people forget that, especially in their 40s, where it's just rise and grind. I need to retire in 20 years, so I need to make as much money as physically possible. And at 40, you're almost at your peak level of income. You're almost at your peak earning season, so to speak. And you're not at peak upward mobility, but you're at peak earnings. And so many in their 40s are just chasing, again, vanity metrics and numbers on a screen. That isn't something that's healthy. That isn't something that's worthwhile. There's a entrepreneur, Naval. He's the CEO of some company, I can't remember. However, he says that the number one thing you should do is build a business that sustains you, and build a business that you own the business. The business does not own you, and money does not own you. And I'm a big believer in that mantra and in that ideology, because so many people chase money, status, and it's with this that many problems arise, and with this that many people fall behind, actually, in the pursuits of getting ahead. And it's with that I believe so many intelligent, driven individuals burn out and become statistics. Now, I don't want you to become a statistic. I don't want anyone on this channel to become a statistic. However, I will be frank with you. If you're unwilling and unable to go out of your comfort zone and be in a scenario where perhaps you're a little bit uncomfortable, then I'm sorry, you probably will become a statistic. Is that brutal? Probably, yeah, it is. However, it's the actuality of it, and living in the moment becomes far more difficult when you are consistently dealing with constant barriers to what's trying to get to. We often use money as a metric to define success. However, money is a horrible metric to define success. And the reason why is if you are wealthy, that doesn't inherently mean you're happy. That doesn't necessarily mean you're fulfilled. And so it's with that I urge you to open your minds a little bit and perhaps go abroad. Hope you guys enjoyed that video and my perspective as to how life abroad has taught me what truly matters to me. I hope you gained some value out of it, and if you did, please leave a like, please subscribe, and I'll be seeing you in the next video. Peace out, fellas.